I can aim just thinking about it makes me mad. Little kids doing drugs, it turns my stomach. That stuff hurts. Stop you from living up to your potential. It holds you back. It hurts the user. It hurts his family. And it hurts his friends. I just want to shake some sense into you kids that are using drugs and think about using. So remember,
Shit.
don't.
What the
Or else.
Oh my god!
Big.
Oh my god! Oh my god!
That and oh shit, thank you. And it's, you know, I love them, but then I've also smoked some of the dankest kushes, and I love those too. So yeah, like I'm just a fan of cannabis. Like I came to it so late. I only started smoking 7 years ago now.
I guess that would have been another question for me. When did you start consuming cannabis?
I smoked like the first time. I must have been like 13, or yeah, I was 13, and one day I had my first beer, my first joint, my first beer, my first cigarette, my first hit of a joint, and my first hit of acid.
That's a successful
It was a
day.
good fucking day. April, whatever it was.
That's the day to almost remember.
Yeah, exactly. And I definitely enjoyed acid the most out of all of them. Like cannabis, I remember getting really high for the first time when I was with this kid who had a lot of money. And we were at his place, and he had a guy come over and deliver cannabis. And this is like not when that didn't exist. Like, I didn't know how this was happening. And I would have been 14, 15, and we smoked cannabis. And I got super stoned. And that was the first time I remember being really high off weed. Like I smoked weed a couple times before that, but never get really that high. And then I went straight edge, where I didn't smoke or, you know, drink or do any drugs for like almost like 15 years. And then, actually almost like it was 15 years. And then I had a panic attack in Europe. And I'd had panic attacks before. I was on anti-anxiety pills for about 5 years at this point.
Okay.
And I had the panic attacks before because I had cycled off these pills because I couldn't write lyrics for the band when I was on the pills. The pills fucked with me somehow, and I just couldn't get to the place I need to get to write lyrics.
Oh, yeah, I understand that. I've
Yeah.
been on meds myself
Yeah,
before.
you know what it's like. So,
Yeah.
so I would cycle off the pills. So I cycled off the pills. We went to Europe. I had a panic attack, and I went to the hospital in Denmark and got refills on my prescriptions, and got back on the pills. But it was like, you know, I had to go to like a legit, you know, a hospital, you know, for mental health. So it was kind of scary. So we went back to Europe the next year and cycled off the pills again like an idiot. Went to Europe, we were in Holland, felt like a panic attack coming on. Weed was everywhere, you know.
Yeah.
I decided like, what the fuck, let's just try smoking some of this weed. And it worked. It worked like immediately for me as a relief from anxiety. And I kind of knew right away that everything had changed. And I got back and I told my doctor, and she was very hesitant, to say
That's
the
an
least.
understatement.
And I did it anyway. I went off my pills and just started smoking cannabis and using cannabis to medicate, and started losing all this weight, which she'd been on me to do anyway. So once I started losing the weight, she was like, okay, maybe we can talk about this, signing you up into these programs. So she started trying to sign me up into the program, but that was right when the switchover was happening between the MAR and PR. So at that point, I was in this quasi kind of like area where she was signed me into the program, but there was no program to get signed into. And that's when we started making those documentaries. And yeah, it was kind of like from there, it was, you know, I've been kind of big into cannabis. Like it was amazing when I got into it. Like I knew I wanted to smoke cannabis in a way that none of my friends wanted to smoke cannabis. So it was only through lounges that I got to meet
Like-minded smokers.
like-minded smokers, you know, like that's where I met people, was at Vapour Social when that was around, rest in peace, or Vapour Central, hanging out Vapour Central, you know, and then, you know, hanging out here and hanging out like in places like that's where you meet people in the cannabis community.
Oh, most certainly.
You know?
It really seems to be the only place you can because it's such a well-guarded community.
Yeah, and it by kind of like this is the only place that people feel safe to be open.
Well, one of
In
the
lounges.
it's almost like we have to see somebody else partaking in order
Yeah.
to
You're cool.
build that
Yeah.
build that trust barrier or get rid of that barrier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, and that's an unfortunate reality of criminalization.
Well, speaking of criminalization, what are your thoughts on legalization coming up July 1st?
Well, I'm of two minds. Obviously, like I think it's going to be very exciting. It's gonna, it's kind of bittersweet because it's ruined so many people's lives.
Okay, well, I guess we should break it down into federally and provincially there because
Yeah.
it's a big
Yeah.
shit show going on there.
Yeah.
We happen to be in Ontario at the moment,
Yeah.
where vapor lounges and dispensaries will be illegal by July 1st.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on Ontario then, on our choice to,
That drives me nuts that they're doing that. As someone who kind of like got to grow up in my limited experience with cannabis time, during this period where these places were kind of allowed to exist, like this is where I learned about cannabis. This is where this is how cannabis should be dispensed. This is how cannabis should be consumed. Like I think the idea that people are going to all smoke it in their house, I think it's short-sighted. People don't want that. People don't want people smoking in their building. Like people are gonna, and I don't believe that secondhand cannabis smoke is harmful in the way that tobacco secondhand smoke is. But at the same time, I think people don't want that odor in their apartments and in their houses necessarily. So
very true.
they're going to need to have lounges to people consume. They're going to need to have, and as far as those cannabis stores, they're going to be busy. There's not a lot of them.
And the employees working there are going to have absolutely no experience in the industry
Mm-hmm.
because the people that can get employed with the government or their sub-branches have to pass the criminal record check and all of that, and a lot of us can't. Me, myself, I can't.
Well, that's the other thing that's fucked up about it, right? Like, that's the worst part about it.
Yeah.
They're taking the industry away from the people that built it. The people that risked their livelihood and freedom and everything because they believed in this plan and had to be made criminal because of that association. And these are the people who are going to fuck out of the industry. Like, yeah, that's really fucked up. Like the whole thing, like every strain, every growing technique, every extraction technique is derived from black market knowledge.
Oh.
So, for them to just pluck it wholesale and be like, no, you can't make money off it, this guy has to make the money off it, is kind of the thing that's ultimately wrong with this legalization.
Well, what do you think about the plan for Ontario to go with the LP system? As a medical patient, I myself am a medical patient. I know that a lot of the licensed producers aren't putting out the quality of cannabis that I personally need.
Yeah, like on the regular, I've not gotten amazing cannabis from my experience with the licensed producer system. Like it makes sense that that's what they want to go with because that's like the only way you're going to make money off it on that kind of grand scale. But people.
Thanks, Steve. Sorry.
But that's the only way you're going to make money off it on a grand scale, right? So that's the way they're going to go with it. But like people have kind of seen that it's hard to grow this plant on a mass farming kind of level, a factory farming kind of level.
Anybody who's growing knows that if you want a quality product, you're better off with your craft grows.
Yeah, like I think that's what I've kind of seen too. Like most of the best cannabis you get is when it's from a small grow, and that would make sense, And I think ultimately that's where it's going to go, because everyone's going to be allowed to grow their own plants. So everyone's going to want to grow their own weed eventually. You know?
Or want somebody to grow their weed for
Or grow
them
there for
so that
them.
they can get a better,
Yeah.
a better product.
Yeah,
in the end.
and also that's the other thing. It's like not everyone's living situation allows them to grow cannabis, and people have the right to grow their own medicine, you know, or to have the right to grow their own cannabis, and you know, I think that's eventually where it's going to go. And then all these big giant grows are going to be in trouble because their system is based around the $10 gram, or like an $8 gram even, or even a $6 gram. But like if you grow it
based on bulk rather than
Yeah.
quality.
yeah, but if you grow it yourself or you get someone else to grow it for you, it's probably going to come in at like what, $3 a gram?
Even less if you're going organic. Right?
Yeah. Yeah, and it's going to be about processing. I think processing companies like, you know, rosin companies, rosin presses.
Certainly, that'll be huge because even as a medical patient, we're not allowed to use, for the most part, any solvents
Yeah.
for processing our plants or our materials.
Yeah.
So that pretty much only leaves us with butter, coconut oil, or press.
Rosin.
Yeah, that's
rosin
it.
extraction. Which is like, you know, we're in the golden age of extracts, and people are doing crazy things to this plant through extraction. And for that to all just be shut down because someone's got a fear of it based on not necessarily science, just based on
Bad reputation.
bad
bad
reputation.
press.
Yeah, bad press, you know. And then also, like, you know, there have been kids blowing up. It would be naive not to pretend that's...
But anybody with some common basic knowledge or basic sense would not perform in the same way they did the extraction.
Yeah.
I mean,
Having
it's
been in a
absolute
room.
common, the stupidest things have been blowing these people up. There was
Oh,
an
yeah.
incident last year in Toronto where a certain dispensary blew their couch into the middle of a certain street downtown. And like, why are you doing an open blast in a contained area in a building? Like, you've got to be dumber than shit to do that. To be quite honest, in my opinion.
Or even open blasting now. You know,
Well, yeah, with closed loop out there, why are you even open blasting? I am a fan of open blasting, but I'm also a fan of the great outdoors, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And, yeah, well, I guess there are dumb people that will blow couches into the middle of the street, so I do see the somewhat of a point on there. Now that I think about it. But no, seriously, there are a lot of good people with no certification that can process and turn some products into some amazing things. We're
Whoa.
smoking some sauce right now by Sauce Boss,
Yeah.
which is made of THCA and some other oils. All of them went through a closed loop process at some point or another,
Yeah.
and involved some solvents. And this is one of the best products, if not the best product I've ever smoked in my life.
Well, because you ask some people, they'll talk about how rosins contain waxes, you know, and smoking flower obviously contains carbon. And
yeah.
like, you know, you can't smoke a fat extraction, like a fat oil extraction, I mean, you know, so it's like, what is the best way? Like, unless you're talking about dry sift, bubble hash, you know, million billion micron screen
yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
You know, like, what else is, you know, there's nothing else. There's like no other option. So, you know, they all have their drawbacks. So why not just find the most pure way to do it? Because this is pretty fucking good.
I myself,
You might as well dig in.
Yeah, I will. So what would be like the craziest Vice moment you ever had?
Oh gosh.
Just like, holy shit, I must be doing a Vice documentary. This is.
A couple. The most weird moment was one time we're like for cannabis stuff going into a grow.
Cheers, man.
Cheers, thank you. We're doing it into a grow, and I look over my my shoulder as we're driving in, and we're in like a car convoy, and I see like a huge fence with razor wire behind me getting closed, and that's getting chained into this gate, and I'm just like, shit, this is fucked. Could be fucked. and then there was like dudes with guns there. It was like not as, you know. While working on this documentary, it's definitely been like, there's been a lot of stuff, like working on this show. You know, being forced to give a sermon in a weird church in the Democratic Republic of Congo by like some like kind of sketchy minister. You know,
Care to elaborate on that?
we were just like, we found ourselves in this situation where one of the wrestlers we were talking about was being converted by this minister, and the minister told me that I had to give a speech that day, and when he was like, "Well, what would it sound like, your speech?" and I gave him what the speech would sound like. He's like, "No, here's what you're actually going to say." And then I'm like, okay, and I'm like looking at the situation where I'm like, oh yeah, he told us not to bring our cameras in. He's got these 2 huge security guards, and it's just me and the crew. I'm like, I'm gonna have to figure my way out.
You're right. That is exactly what I would say.
That's what I'm gonna say. So, I went out there, and I just got out there and realized it was like gonna be like cutting a wrestling promo, or like singing in the band. And so I just went out there and I kind of like went into band performance mode, and you know, edited what I was gonna say, but gave him enough to get out of the situation and just got out of the situation. But it was like, I had no idea how popular this show was until walking around Kinshasa and random people are like chanting at me,
Really?
like some like thing that like a Chillabo is what I got everyone in the crowd to chant, because that's just what this wrestler's chant is, and it would be like, "Who's stronger?" and the crowd would go, "Jesus." We thought they were chanting yes, but it turns out they were chanting Jesus. So I would go, "Chillabo," and they would go, "Jesus." And I was doing it like I did vocals for the band, like yelling it. So afterwards, we're walking around Kinshasa, and people are going up to me on the street like, "Chillabo, hey Chillabo, Chillabo."
That's awesome.
It was yeah. Everywhere we go for this project, I'm like, only Vice. Like, there's no other company in the world where I'd be able to make this.
It's an amazing job you got, brother.
I'm lucky, fucking lucky. Look at this. I get to do an interview smoking sauce,
Sitting
smoking
around on a
joints,
Friday
you know.
afternoon.
What a
Can't
life!
complain.
I can't complain.
Can't complain, brother.
This is part of my job somehow.
Hey, I got lucky somehow too.
Yeah,
Well,
exactly.
Thank you very much for
Thank you
stopping
for
by,
having
brother.
me. Thank you.
You know what it is. Well, Rabbid Dabber with 2 red eyes. Damian Abraham from Vice. Oh, one last thing. You stopped in, you sat there, and
Oil and Flowers too is the other podcast. That's a cannabis podcast. Shout out to Buddha Blaze.
Is Fucked Up still performing?
Yeah, Fucked Up still performing.
Okay.
We're just taking a minute to kind of figure out what's next. You know, we got like, I'm very lucky in a couple ways now where like I got to do this band and got to, you know, do a lot of stuff with this band, and it's just like, what next? You know, and you want to make sure you do something interesting, and you want to make sure you don't do something repeating yourself.
You want something quality. You don't want to push
Yeah.
the same.
So we're kind of figuring it out. We're like, you know, we're in the studio right now. It's going to be interesting. I'm really excited to hear what people think of the record. It's going to be very different.
Right
So,
on.
and I'm not normally one for enjoying things that change.
Neither am I.
Unless it's cannabis technology. That's the only thing
That's
I like
it.
seeing
If it keeps
progress.
getting
Yeah.
better and better.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
For now, that's all, guys. See you later. Thanks for stopping in. Too high.